We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
You are listening to The Underground Marketing Conspiracy, a secret ritual where entrepreneurs acquire highly classified and confidential business knowledge that the top 1% of income earners don't want you to know. And now, your host, Maddie Milligan.
What is up, my fellow conspirator and conspirators? Welcome to another episode of The Underground Marketing Conspiracy. Woo! Let's talk about your exit strategy with your business. So, I heard an interview recently from, I don't recall her name, but she owned this huge pet website that sold pet food, and whether that's dogs and cats, but all sorts of different pet related things. And she talked about how she was always like, okay, what's the exit strategy for this? Like, how am I going to sell this business eventually, right? And that's a very smart thing to do, because this way you're planning with the end in mind, which is one of the 7 highly effective habits. If you've never read that by Stephen Covey, I would totally go and recommend reading that book, because it's a must read for any business person, entrepreneur. And she was like, okay, I always thought from like, how much do I want to sell this for? And she had a number in mind that she would sell it for. And it was like some ridiculous amount. It was like $60 or $70 million that she ended up selling it for. But she always had that in mind, right? So I think with a lot of people, they're like, all right, they're thinking about how they're going to do their startup. But in a lot of cases, it might even just be better to sell your business to a lot of these venture capitalist companies or to an investor and just make your money. And that just frees up your time to work on other things. I've talked with so many people recently, and I used to think like, and I still do sometimes think that a lot of people, they go on Dragon's Den or Shark Tank, and it might not be a good idea for them, right? They might not be at the point where they even need to sell that. They just need to do a little bit more or get that. But I always think about selling the asset in whole. Like, how much could I get in the end for the asset? And there's one dude who I know who I think he wants to sell his company for like $10 million. That's like his goal, and then he's basically out, and he's going to use that to pay for, I think it was his nephew's like college education, and really just help support his family because he doesn't want kids himself. And I was like, hey, that's very noble of you. And I totally respect that. And that's a very good plan. And then he's kind of created a long-term plan for how he's going to get there. And that's all about really creating teams and more so just systematizing everything so that when you do go to one of those companies and try and sell it to them, it's very easy to explain. Everything's systemized. It's as if anyone can run it without you, right? But that's the end goal that you have in mind. And even as an example, the company Tiffany & Co. recently was purchased by luxury giant LVMH for a cool $16.2 billion. That's billion with a B as in Bravo. That's a crazy amount too, right? So think about this. Like I'm sure Tiffany has been around for a very long time, as you know, but that was their ultimate exit plan, right? To sell to a bigger company, right? A conglomerate or one of these bigger companies that has multiple subsidiaries under its umbrella. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's different though if, again, you're going to investors and being like, hey, I'll sell you some equity in my company if you just give me some capital. But then they're just giving you the money, and sure, you might get their expertise and their consultation, but you're still going to have to work really hard, right? I think, again, having that exit plan where it's like, all right, I'm going to build this and then eventually give it away. I always consult with a lot of e-commerce people. I think they're the people that I've relate to the most. And I always talk with them. I'm like, look, like, sure, there might be a little bit of passion in this niche, but when you sell it to these venture capitalist companies, they're just going to be like, all right, how much revenue and sales are you doing? What are your profit margins? Like, how much does it cost you to acquire a customer? They're just going to ask these questions. And if you can explain it in a very simple way, and again, you have all that data that's backing what you're saying, and everything's systematized, and it's something where it's like turnkey, then it's going to make it easier for them to buy, but you'll also be able to sell it for a lot more. And there's a lot of websites where you can do this. I mean, you might even already have a lot of money as an investor, and you're like, hey, like, I want to find some cool things to buy, some businesses to buy, and just see if, I can plug them in and just give it to my team, and then they can run them. And there's sites out there like flippa.com, and I think it's Empire Flippers. So those are good sites where you can flip and buy businesses, right? Online businesses. But again, that's your long-term strategy. And that's really why you need some sort of an exit plan. So I think thinking with the end in mind, where it's like, all right, eventually want to sell this. How much would be something where I can live, like how much would I need to really maintain the current lifestyle I have, right? To provide for my family, to make sure that I can put food on the table, live a very comfortable life, to really just give me a lot more time and freedom. In some cases, you might also want to be like, hey, I want to sell this so I can really start my main passion business, right? And as you know, I do a lot of copywriting, a lot of digital marketing consulting, but I'd love to own a big e-commerce brand. That's been one of my goals, and just a little thing that I've liked to do, that I've always wanted to do, to own like a really, not a huge brand, like a brand worth maybe not even that much. Like honestly, for me, I eventually, like I've talked about before, want to just move into the country and live a very peaceful and comfortable life, and a very like simple life, and have a little homestead and a little log cabin and just chill out up there and be in nature, because I just find that I'm at peace when I'm up there the most. But that's my end goal. And I'm like, okay, it really wouldn't take that much. Like honestly, like a couple million, I would have more than enough, right? So that's kind of what I want to do with like a little e-commerce brand. And when I do have that as well, I'm like, okay, what's it going to cost? What's it going to cost to maintain the place in the long run? And at the same time, really, would it be something where I could also have, if I really wanted to, could I run like my consulting and digital marketing business up there at the same time? And it's like, yep, I think that's doable. How I would hook up all the internet, that's a whole other story. But you yourself, again, as a business owner, you need to start thinking about, like, you know, what's my exit plan with this business, right? Like, and again, if you don't have that stuff in place right now, that's absolutely fine. This is why I'm bringing this to your attention right now. So you can start thinking about that and implementing little things, like doing a little bit of research and really figuring out how to optimize your business so that you can sell it, right? There's companies out there even where you can hire them and they'll basically help you systematize everything and help you sell the company to an investor. And sure, they're going to take a percentage of the sales, which is fine, but they can help you basically set everything up. Because if your company is a disaster, and to be honest, I've looked in the back ends of many businesses, and I would say 100% of them, beyond a shadow of a doubt, are all in some sort of disarray, right? You see these businesses and their logos on the outside, but then when you look on the inside, it's not the same, right? Jim Collins calls this, I think, something like pulling up the stones or the bricks and looking at the slugs underneath. When you're like, oh, like look at the brick, it's nice and clean. Then you pull it up and you look under and it's like, oh my God, there's all these like slugs and centipedes and all this disgusting stuff you don't want to have to deal with. And that's normal in any business, right? There's always going to be those parts in the back end that aren't working perfectly. But then again, this is where systematizing everything and creating it so it's similar to kind of like a Henry Ford assembly line style process, where it's super simple and you just need to optimize everything, find the bottlenecks in what you're doing. And then again, that allows you to increase revenue every year. Great book I recommend on finding the bottlenecks and really optimizing your processes, called The Goal. One of my favorite books. It's more so an allegory, and it's told in a story, like a not a real thing, but a lot of the lessons in that book are very, very powerful. It's one of the books where I'm like, oh wow, I'm so glad this was suggested to me, and then I read it, because that is really going to show you how to identify the bottlenecks and the processes in your business that aren't working, and how to optimize those systems. So that way, once you do have that in place, that way at any point, if you're like, okay, I'm burnt out, I'm tired of this, I can just sell my business. Because what you don't want to do is basically just become a slave to your business, where you're the person that's doing everything in your business, right? There's no automation. So if you go to a business, it's like, hey, like I want to sell this to you. They're like, cool, like, can I get someone else to do the work? And you're the person in the business doing all the work. It's going to be hard to sell that business, right? But if you have other people doing all the work and they can just use those same people or plug in their own people very easily, then that's going to make it easier for them to be like, okay, cool, I want to buy your business. And even then, what you could do is, honestly, you could eventually sell your business as your exit strategy and then become an investor in other businesses, right? If you sell your business for several million, dollars, like if you're selling your business for like $50 million, like dude, you're so set. You don't need to work a day in your life after that. Like if you have $50 million, like what do you really need to do? But a lot of people, that's not enough for them. They want more power, and that's kudos to them. Like they can totally do that. That's just doesn't fit my personal value system. But if that does fit yours, like dude, do you, right? And again, having those systems, it's really just going to make it easier for you. And then once you have that money to do sell the company, then if you do want to become huge, right, then take a little bit of your money and then invest in other companies. It's similar to what Elon Musk did, right? He sold his share in PayPal when they, I think, went public or whatever happened back in the day. I don't remember the exact story, but he sold PayPal, or they sold PayPal. He got his money and he's like, okay, what do I want to do next? All right, cool. I want to revolutionize the car, right? I want electric cars. Like, so he started Tesla, and he's like, all right, cool. Like, I want to improve the space program and space flight. So he created SpaceX. I want to improve how solar energy is used. So he created Solar City. I want to improve how transportation happens. So he's creating this like Hyperloop thing, right? And that all came from him selling PayPal. And he took the money, and he's a CEO, I believe, in each of those companies, I think. I'm not sure about the latter two, but I know for sure he's the CEO of SpaceX and Tesla. So he is basically used the money he made from selling those companies to invest in some other opportunities, right, and grow those. And I think there's very few people like Elon Musk, though, right? Like the average person, I'm sure they're like, cool, like I sold my business for a few million, like I'm good. Now I can just, focus on my family, live the kind of lifestyle I want to live. Maybe that's traveling, maybe that's eating at fancy restaurants, maybe that's being like me and just spending more time in nature and spending more time reading and educating myself and learning new things, acquiring new skills, maybe being, again, living the 4-hour work week like Tim Ferriss. Whatever that is to you, decide how much money you would need to live that lifestyle. And a great exercise I like to do is, I recommend to everyone, is the perfect day exercise. We kind of go through being like, okay, what would my perfect day look like, right? Like, I wake up, where am I? Like, who am I with? Like, what do I smell? What do I see? What do I feel? Like, what's the temperature? Where am I, right? And really envisioning that. And then again, maybe even testing out, because if that's what you want. I've had some people where they're like, oh, I want to go and live on a beach. And then they go, and after a week, they're like, I hate living on the beach. So they stop doing that. They're like, damn, I should have tried that first before I gave up on everything. So that's what I would do, right? Like, have that end goal in mind and then start from there. And then that's going to make it easier. So that way you have something to work for. And then that way you have an exit plan, right? Because entrepreneurs, like, they're all stressed out. They're doing a million things. They have all sorts of other ideas that they want to test out. So again, thinking with the end in mind is very important, because that's going to allow you to get the freedom that you truly, deeply desire. Hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Underground Marketing Conspiracy. If you did, I would consider subscribing wherever you're listening to this to, and consider listening to several other episodes. If you do have a chance, maybe you enjoy this one, you can share it with someone else as well, and maybe just talk about this with them and get their opinion on what they think about exit strategies as well. My name is Matty Milligan, and as always, thank you for listening. I will see you next time on another episode of The Underground Marketing Conspiracy. Woo!